I'm extremely pleased to be able to introduce today's speaker, who is Beaulieu, who is a lecturer in classics at Tufts University and also works at the Perseids project, also there. We'll be speaking today, sorry, I'll stop on the title there, about teaching with the Perseids platform, tools and methods, and she'll explain everything about what that means.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking you all for attending on a Friday afternoon, and also for the very gracious invitation from Gabby. I appreciate that. So, to get right to the heart of the matters at hand today, I will be speaking about the Perseids platform. So, as you can recognize, we named it according to a very conventional method in computer developing, which is sort of the son of Perseids. So it is the platform that makes Perseids interactive in so many more ways than it already was. So this is a project that we have been developing since 2010 when I came to Tufts. And the idea of it is to be able to treat new kinds of source documents in classics. So we have the textual sources that are already archived in the digital library, which we all know and love, as I trust. But I wanted to move on to Greek inscriptions and Latin manuscripts for reasons that I will detail a little further in the text, in the talk. So the needs for this platform, which made us conceive of the project in the first place, was that we wanted to make source documents, in particular inscriptions and manuscripts, widely available to the public, to students, to scholars. We all know that these documents are floating around, they're in museums, they're in collections. We wanted to be able to publish them easily. However, while doing that, we needed to keep the high editorial standards that are common in our disciplines. In epigraphy, for instance, we all know that there are very strict conventions, as well as in manuscript edition and textual criticism. From a pedagogical standpoint, the needs that this platform answers to is the need to step outside of the traditional canon. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for Cicero and I'm all for Demosthenes. Yet, there is a very particular pedagogical usefulness to stepping outside of the canon and reading a text that has no translation, that has no actual fame or any circulation at all. It allows students to practice, of course, their skills in Greek and Latin. Often there are some lexical or grammatical rarities, so it allows students to be in contact with such exceptionalities of documents. The platform also addresses a need to interact online with instructors and peers, and as we know, our public now of students is more and more attuned to online communication and online social life in a lot of ways. So we thought that bringing this kind of interaction into the classroom would help us reach perhaps in an extended public of students. And finally, we think that this platform helps us create a more motivating learning experience, because students get to contribute to scholarship directly from very early on in their careers. And in that sense, we're very much following in the tracks of the Homer Multitext project, who also get students very early in their undergraduate careers to participate in the project. Now, special concerns that manuscripts and inscriptions bring is the fact that they are physical objects, and we need a platform that is going to be able to handle the fact that the monument is meant to be seen in the case of an inscription, and in the case of a manuscript, there's often illustrations, initials, marginalia, etc. So we needed a platform that would handle images very well as text, and show the relationship between image and text. So we came up with a pilot project, which I tested in my medieval Latin class in 2011, And this is the Tisch Library Miscellany, and I'm going to show you the website that was created by our colleagues at the library. I want to say, before going any further, that this project is really the result of a wonderful collaboration between the faculty in the classics department, software developers, in particular Bridget Almas at Perseids, and our colleagues in the library. So it's very motivating to see such momentum coming from such a diverse team. And of course our students, who are the central part of this team. So the Tisch Library Miscellany, what are they? They are a collection of miscellaneous manuscript and early printed book leaves, which were found totally randomly in the Tufts University library by the librarians who were cataloging in the special collections, and found this folder with manuscript. One of them is this beautiful 12th century manuscript, which I can show you. They, to this day, don't really know where it came from. The best hypothesis is that a professor put it together at some point in the 70s to teach a class on the history of the book, and just kind of left it there for future generations. And so many of these manuscripts, in fact about 2/3, are in Latin. And I undertook to translate and edit these manuscripts with my medieval Latin students. This example is a 12th century manuscript which was not identified before. The librarians did not know what it was. With students working on it, we discovered that it contains parts of a sermon by Pope Leo the Great, and also musical notation, which is interesting. And if you note, the pedagogical effect of such a project is quite amazing in terms of learning Latin. As you can see, the edges are all cut, and so the students had to fill in all of these blanks without a text. So they had to really use their Latin skills. And of course, bits of scripture that are interspersed within the text, which helped them to find what the text was, for one thing, and also to find the missing pieces. So with the success of this project, we decided to go with a more formal workflow. Oops, I'm sorry. And to really organize better so that we could do this on a more regular basis. And this is where we started getting new manuscripts, which we are very happy about. This is a 14th century compendium of English forest law, which was part of actually some kind of hoard that the librarians also found. After finding the miscellany, they decided to dig a little deeper and found this. This book is actually about this big. It's a very small pocket book for a lawyer or perhaps a law student of the time, and we had it digitized, and we'll be working on this in January in my class. So we are very excited to start work on that. Other things that we acquired now just this year with support from the NEH, we acquired this Justinian, which will be really fun because the edges are so worn and cracked. And this fragment, it is unidentified, and it is apparently on geography. So I cannot wait to see what our students will actually discover once they get into this one. So other documents, I mentioned inscriptions. This is the inscription of Nedimos. This is a sarcophagus, obviously, but the inscriptions are on either side of this, and we will be dealing with these as well. So I mentioned that we received support from the NEH, and I want to mention this right now. So this is how we got started in developing the Perseids platform to make a workflow that would support a larger scale project. So we started with a digital humanities startup grant. We also received an internal grant from Tufts University called Tufts Innovates, and this year we received support from the Andrew Mellon Foundation to continue our work on Perseids. So now let me get into what exactly Perseids is. It is a conglomeration of various resources that are already existing. So really what we did was, instead of reinventing the wheel, we stitched together things that were already there. We collaborated with a lot of colleagues, in particular at the Homer Multitext Project, at papyri.info, and other units throughout the world and throughout the web. So we owe all of this work, of course, to Bridget Almas, which many of you know. So a conglomeration of what resources? The site services. So this was, of course, developed by the Homer Multitext team. What the site services do is allow to link text and image. So we have various tools that are inherited from their work. The papyri.info group produced the SOSOL platform, which allows for collaborative editing and also the use of the EPIDOC standards. So we are in conformance there for inscriptions, and it also allows us to pass the text around in a very seamless way between student and instructor, or between the members of a research team. So someone makes an addition, someone else can make a correction, bounce it back to the original editor, or continue the work, produce a translation, etc. And I will detail how all of this works. Perseids, of course, is the sort of umbrella of all of this, and we use a lot of the resources in Perseids. And finally, Alpheos, which you may not be familiar with, but it is a set of morphological tools and of pedagogical tools, which allow us to produce quizzes, vocabulary lists, etc. And so that's really a strong part of the pedagogical component of the platform. I encourage you to consult Bridget Almas's paper if you're interested in the technical aspects of this integration of various services. The paper is available online. So how exactly does this work? And I talked about a seamless workflow, something that is online and that we can all collaborate into. So here is how it functions. Start by signing in, and here in my screenshot I have the Google sign-in, but we are working on having students being able to log in with institutional credentials. So that should be up very soon. So once you've worked your way into the platform, you choose a text to edit or amend as you wish. And here I produce the example with the epitaph of Nedumos, that's the sarcophagus I just showed a few minutes ago. So you select, and you can either create an addition or amend an existing one. Then you will get to this window where the XML header is automatically populated, and then you will create your transcription. While you transcribe, we stacked the windows here to show better what's happening. But we have a high-resolution image of the inscription itself, and underneath the XML window where you enter your text as you read it off of the stone. This part is the image citation tool developed by the Homer Multitext folks, and this part is SOSOL, is the editing module. So as you look on the stone, you can see that the letters Rho, Mu, Alpha, etc. are present on the stone, and you will type this. We have the tags here. We know that we lost a Mu and an Alpha, and we know this from a previous editor who saw the stone before it was integrated into the church wall. So we know that Mu Alpha was there. We supplied the tags there, and then you write what you actually see. And you will highlight with your mouse. You mouse over the word that is actually there in order to create a link between your transcription and the image. And later on, this will allow clicking and seeing that particular region of interest. Those who edit here, and I'm sure there are many, will understand the effectiveness of such a tool to indicate your editorial choices. With inscriptions and manuscript, there's often debate as to where a word ends. We can also do it at the level of letters in cases where letters are debatable. So this tool is very nimble in terms of indicating what's actually on the stone. Once you've done this, the region of interest that you've indicated with your image citation tool, it creates a URN, and you will record that URN on a Google Drive, and we are working on handling this automatically in SOSOL. Right now we're using this method, which has been working just fine. All right, then if you want to add a translation, once your editing step is done, you actually follow the same process. You click on Add a Translation, and you will get another XML window in which you will put in your translation and forward it to the board. What's interesting in terms of translation is that we have many languages available as of now: English, French, Latin, and we are also working on supporting a wide range of other languages. The platform is actually language independent. The Alpheus tools was built to handle any language, so it would be great, in fact, to have Chinese or Arabic or whatever, or various translation into various languages of the same inscription. And of course, what a great assignment to translate the Greek inscription into Latin. We can think of all kinds of possibilities here. Here's the XML header for adding and translation, so very much the same process as the editing. The commentary, very important part really to explain what this document is. So, as you can see, you can enter text there, and you can insert links, external link, footnotes, and bibliography. Those of you who have worked with SOSOL know that SOSOL has a central bibliography tool, so we can link to it very easily from this part of the tool. We can also link to Google Books, etc., which can be useful in the case of inscription. For instance, the sarcophagus that I was showing has been edited. The first editions were by travelers, which is very common with inscriptions, and all of this is available on Google Books, so it's very nice to have a direct link to see what's there with the editio princeps. All right, now, if you're done with all of this, you can then preview your work, and this is what SOSOL generates here. So it will generate, of course, the brackets for text that is not there anymore, dots, etc., things of that nature. It will also generate links to the apparatus criticus. So if you indicate, for instance, Kirchner edits this, and you can put it in the apparatus, and that's handled automatically by SOSOL. Then you send this to the board. So whatever changes you've made, if you've edited an entire text or if you've changed one letter, you have to send it to the board, describe your changes, and move on. And the board will vote yes or no, and will give you feedback on what you've done. So a very useful tool from a pedagogical standpoint, of course, because you can explain to your students if they made an error, or if they need to work more on something, or if they did great. You have an occasion to do that. Also, if you're working in a team of scholars, very useful because you can put notes, suggestions, etc. for your colleagues. Finally, you get this output. So as you can see, we have here the text with its links to the apparatus criticus. We have a tab that also takes us to a diplomatic edition and to the XML. Facing this, a translation, a tab for commentary, bibliography, and contextual information. So, as you click around, you can see, for instance, here I put the commentary just to show what that would look like. And here are the Alpheus tools, which I will talk some more about when we get to the dynamic syllabus. But this is where that gets useful, so you can click and see a morphological analysis as well as a dictionary entry. You can mark it as learned on your vocabulary tool. So in a classroom setting, you can imagine quizzing your students on text that they've edited. So if I know that my student X has edited inscription such and such, I know what words he's supposed to know. And he can also make a vocabulary list to review before the quiz. That's the sort of assignment you can think of. Finally, I want to show you this, where we indicated a region of interest to indicate what letters are actually on the stone. This is the output that's created, so I can actually go back and see that region. And of course, from an editorial standpoint, this is nice to verify the editor's conclusions. You may agree or disagree, and if you disagree, you're absolutely free to go into SOSOL and propose a change. So it is really collaborative in that sense, and it is also, I believe, a very honest method of edition, because you put your audience right in front of the evidence, and they can judge for themselves whether they agree or not, or whether they believe it's half and half, or whatever the situation may be. Just to note the archiving situation. So we archive the text in Perseids and in our institutional repository. We are working on automating the process to push the data into the repository. That is still being worked out. Version history, a very important point with SOSOL, because of course we have many versions which supersede one another. We keep all version histories in the Git repositories, but only the approved version are finalized and saved in the master branch, and users have the choice. Right now we've decided to go with that. They have a choice to delete version in their branches which have not yet been submitted or approved. Finally, for accessibility, we are putting them up as a collection on Perseids, so it will be accessible from that side as well, which allows to use different Perseids tools, search tools, vocabulary tools, references, etc. are available from that side of the applications. Now, this is a planned data flow, so of what we want Perseids to do between the Tufts institutional repository and the Perseids digital library. So we have input at the very top, and this input goes into Perseids, which then shares data with the Perseids digital library, and then it flows into the preservation repository, from which we are able to disseminate the data, the digital editions, and as you can see at the very last, ePortfolios. And I will talk more about what ePortfolios do, but for now let me just say that this is a module that will record every user's contributions, all of the contributions, whether you changed the letter, you made a comment, you did anything, it will go into your ePortfolio. So for students, we see the application of this right away. So as a teacher, you can evaluate everything your student have been doing during the semester. For scholars, similarly, you can give proper credit where necessary. And it will also be useful for students in the context of graduate school applications, job searches. You can show the history of your work, and you can put also term papers in there, all kinds of instances of your work that then acquire a very long shelf life. Instead of sitting in your professor's office, they're actually available there on the web, and they keep living after the semester is over. So now I want to move to our second use case that we'll discuss today, and these are really just two of the use cases. These are the ones I use personally, but there are many others, and I will talk about that at the very end. This is an instance where we have what we call a dynamic syllabus in the context of a Greek language class, so in this case, a Homer class. So what we want to do here is offer the students the possibility of having all of the readings available online in one place. Those readings are then analyzed thanks to our tools, the Alpheus tools and the Perseids tools, and the students can contribute their own annotations through the Perseids platform. So you see once again here the synergy between the various parts of these tools. So let's say, for instance, that Odyssey Book 8, 469 to 586 has been assigned for a particular class. The text will be leveraged right here from Perseids, so the students go to my page and they will right there see the text that is being assigned for week 2 in this particular case. Then, as the student prepares for a class, they can use the Alpheus tools to have vocabulary help, grammatical help, of course, and as well to prepare their vocabulary lists. So they can decide that they know what polymetis means now, and they will check that and keep a record of that. Then, as I showed, as a teacher, you can use the Perseids tools to prepare this vocabulary list, or the student can decide to do it. So you link back to Perseids, same passage. The vocabulary tool here will give you every instance of every different word that's present in that passage. So you can identify all of the words that you should know. Very useful, of course, for exam preparation. From the side of the teacher or from the side of the student, whichever way you decide to do that. Here is another way to create a vocabulary list, and that list is interesting because the Alpheus tools here will compare two target texts. So if I'm teaching Homer and my student have read Odyssey 8, such and such, I want to give them an unseen passage, but I don't want it to be too difficult. I want it to be something they can handle from what they've read. I use the comparison tool to find a text that has suitable matches in terms of vocabulary. So then I can give them an unseen passage with very reasonable number of annotations or no need for a dictionary, etc. So it's very useful in terms of personalizing the assignments to your specific group or to even individual students, depending on what they've been doing. Here is one way that students can contribute knowledge through the Perseids platform. This is the annotation Treebanking module. So what that does is students will parse every word in an assigned sentence. So verb tense, mood, person, etc. And they will indicate the grammatical relationship between the different words of the sentence to create a tree. This can be evaluated for credit, and then once it's all corrected, goes into the Alpheus Treebanking module as a reading aid for future students, of course. Or you can do it as a classroom exercise. So that's a very useful thing as you go through the text, instead of just reading and pointing out, oh, here's a genitive absolute and so on and so forth. You do it with the class, actually, and you can actually go quite fast through a lot of text and just produce these morphological annotation as you go. And of course, all of this is available to your students for review when they prepare for tests or what have you. All right, here's another possibility with Alpheus. You can quiz yourself, or you can decide to quiz your students. So here's one possibility is to align the Greek with the English. So here the student is being asked to find what English word enepe corresponds to. So then you will go and click on the corresponding word in the English, and of course you can do it in reverse if you like. Another type of quiz will quiz the students on parts of speech, and as you can see, these can adapt to very different levels for students. So this is a relatively easy one. You're being asked to find that enepo is a verb. And finally, paradigm identification. So enepo, the student is being asked to click on the right cell in this table to uncover the right answer of what this verb is. So incorrect guesses uncover the cell on which the student has clicked. So if the student clicked on optative third person, he's being told, no, this would be X form. If the student actually clicks on the right form, which is here, as you can see, we matched it with the paradigm, which is Beaulieu, so we matched epo with that. If you click on the right cell, it uncovers the entire paradigm, which you can then study at your leisure. Finally, yes, I said a word about electronic portfolios, so I want to just detail a little bit more. This module will be available for all of our students and collaborators and will allow to track activity as well on the platform. What are people doing? What do we need to do, etc. All right, let's continue with the dynamic syllabus. So, use case 2, classical mythology. You can use this tool to teach a vast array of courses. I happen to teach classical mythology a lot, so I decided to apply this. So let's say it is week 4 now, and I assigned passages from source documents. As we all know, as instructors of mythology, it is a great opportunity to really have students read primary sources, even though they might want to do it in translation, especially if you're teaching a freshman class. But going from source documents allows us to analyze myths, allows us to analyze differences between different retellings of myths, different contexts in which myths occur, etc., etc. So it is week 4, and for this week I have assigned a required reading in the Homeric hymn to Apollo. Students will go to my page, they click on the link, they will read it in Perseids, and their assignment is done. And that's very convenient, of course, because then you don't have to order 10 texts for the class. You don't have to have the source book, right? You don't have to buy a source book and then you are constrained to use the text that were selected in the source book. You can assign whatever text you feel is appropriate for this particular class. Now, you can see that there are optional readings here. And here's how I do in my class use these optional readings. I ask the students to read these different texts or artifacts that are gradated in order of difficulty. There's easy, medium, and difficult being assigned every week. What these are either further text. Here we have the easy selection, which was from Ovid's Metamorphoses. You can see a different type of selection here from the Art and Archaeology browser. Here I've assigned a crater that shows Artemis, Apollo, and Leto as a reading material. And I could ask further materials. Students are asked to look at these readings each week and produce short essays, maximum of 500 words. The question for these essays are, how do these representations of myths relate to the representation that we have seen in the mandatory reading. How do these differ? Why should they differ? What is the reason for that? Has the cultural context changed? Is it separated by 5 centuries? Is it separated in space, etc., etc.? Did the author have a different intention, etc.? So the students are being asked to analyze the relationships between the different sources that concern a same myth. Now, students are required to submit a minimum of 3 essays during the semester for credit, but we only count the 3 best, so they can submit as many as they like. We grade them and then take the 3 best. So there's really a lot of chances of actually getting full credit for this assignment. And what's interesting is that the module is automated in the Perseids platform. As you can see, we have a little button on the top, create or edit an essay, and that is our annotation module. So the students are taken to a page which looks like this, and they can enter their essays, submit it to the board, which in this case would be myself and my TAs. We read and grade the essays through the SOSOL module. We give it a pass or a fail or whatever in between. We write comments, feedback, and once the essay has passed all these steps, it is included on the Perseids website as a reading aid for future students. It also goes into each student's ePortfolio, so you can track all of the contributions to a particular text. So this is another case where students really can contribute to knowledge even as they learn. So they are producing these essays, which will later be available for their colleagues and which will also be published online. So it's a very motivating experience. Students get to actually publish their findings on myths. And this is an example, of course, for mythology, but you could apply this, as you can see, to just about any class with minimal adaptations. So, further use cases. I mentioned that these are only really just the basics, and these are what I happen to use in my classes. But we have lots and lots of other use cases, and of course we have lots of ideas to develop all kinds of things. So this is one use case that was used by my colleague Monica Berti, and I'm sure many of you know her. Monica is working on fragmentary authors. So here she's working on Istros, and she's telling us that this is a fragment of Istros integrated to another text. The module leveraged this text from Perseids, and Monica was able to identify this through the annotation module. She's telling us here's the lost content item. She'll provide a translation, a commentary, syntax, alignments, etc. All of which we've seen used in other contexts with the Alpheus tool. For instance, we've seen the alignment module used in a quiz. So here we can use it to align the translation with the fragment, etc., etc. So I encourage you, if you're interested in this particular use case, to look at Monica's slides from a conference in Buffalo that she gave recently. It's a very interesting and innovative project. So that's just one example of something else that you could do with Perseids, and that is being done actually. So to conclude, I would like to say that for me, as a researcher and a teacher, the Perseids platform has allowed the integration of research with teaching. So we're always talking about this in administrative context, that we are teaching researchers, but really we can do it here. We can have our students participate in the creation of knowledge, and we can create environments that are very much like a lab. And that is, of course, a workflow that our colleagues in the sciences use regularly. They will have undergraduates in their labs participate in experiments, participating in the creation of data. We can do that too with tools like this. And I think also that this allows us to give our students a different skill set. So we give them the classics education, this is what we do. But we give them at the same time some computer skills and things that, like XML, that they can use in a variety of other contexts and that are useful in themselves. Finally, as we know, classics needs to expand its base of students, and I think that this is one way where we can bring in students that may not have known that they were interested in classics, and we can bring them to see what it is that we do and to hopefully pursue more classes with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was interested, if I may sneak in the first question, by the scenario that you mentioned several times in your presentation of students using SOZL and
Yes.
Alpheus and various other parts
That's
of the tool set to create work which, among other things, becomes then publication and a contribution to scholarship, but is also part of their education and their assessment.
Absolutely.
So I'm sort of imagining a scenario where a student is editing from one of the medieval Latin manuscripts you're talking about, or from an inscription, and they start off and they put together, a piece of work which is a piece of student work, so
Yes.
not perfect. Gets sent to the editorial board, as it were, for vetting and voting on and whatever, in the way that SOZL normally works. In this case, the editorial board is their professors. Gets commented on, gets sent back to them for improvement. Finally, ends up as a very good piece of work that can be made public. Which of the steps in that process factor into their final mark? Are they marked on the final really good piece of work, or are they marked on the slightly shoddy thing they first submitted, or some combination?
That's very interesting. I think that's really up to the teacher. Personally, I like to give credit all along the process. So for term papers, for instance, they turn in 5 different iterations, from really just a thesis statement to the full paper, and in the middle there's bibliography and so on, and I give credit at each step. Right. So for an edition, I would give credit for a first rough pass, and then all other steps. I could imagine someone who only wants to see the final version, or anything in between. So I think really it's up to each person to define what their teaching strategy is going to be. Personally, I find that rewarding the effort at each step is, of course, motivating, but I think it also teaches the students what the process of research really is, because you don't come up with the perfect edition on the first pass. It's a process, and it takes other eyes, it takes other brains to help you get to that point.
And you don't fail just for making mistakes in the very first time.
Absolutely.
Cool, thank you. Any other?
Are they correcting each other's work? Or is it just between student and
You can set it up that way. You can set it up as teams. You can set it up in any number of configurations. Right now we've just done interaction between student and teacher, but you could definitely have them look at each other's work. I have a colleague who set up a research blog in her class where students interact and exchange information and so on. So yes, you could do that. Any other questions I might answer? Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
That was great. Students creating knowledge, wonderful concept, and absolutely being part of the process. 2 great things, all in one. You're on the Perseids platform, so all this is publicly available. I'm assuming that there's lectures and other materials that come about before they reach to this stage. Are they also publicly available? Are they locked away behind the students' login?
You mean the dynamic syllabus and all these things? That's interesting, actually. I need to speak to Bridget about that one. So I would get back to you, because the mythology class one we are just developing. So I would think that right now a student would need to log in, but I can't see why that couldn't be made public, because the output of
If
it
you're
is
making the
public
output
as well.
public, yeah, why not make the...
Absolutely.
I'm thinking of the teaching, what do you call them? Teaching learning objects, modules,
Right.
whatever it is.
Yes.
The things that you use for the teaching,
Mhm.
actually having those up there publicly available as well, would be in the Perseids spirit, yeah?
Absolutely, yes. I think that actually that's something I'm going to think about. Thank you for this.